What happens when one of Hollywood's most legendary actors arrives for what should have been a simple, late-night interview, only to realize the host had a hidden agenda? An agenda that went far beyond entertainment, far beyond friendly banter. What you're about to hear is the truth, the full unfiltered account of one of the most unforgettable and explosive late-night showdowns in television history. A clash so intense it resulted in Samuel L. Jackson being escorted off the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live. This isn't just another awkward celebrity interview. This was about respect, about dignity, about what happens when a line is crossed, a line that should never be crossed. Before we dive in, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment below, because this story will forever change the way you see late-night TV. It all began like any other show at the Jimmy Kimmel Live studios. The crowd was buzzing, the stage was prepped, producers were giving last-minute instructions, and Jimmy himself was reviewing his notes, prepping his usual cheeky one-liners. But tonight's guest wasn't just anyone. It was Samuel L. Jackson, an icon, an actor known across the world, respected for his sharp mind, bold personality, and unshakable presence both on and off the screen. What was supposed to be a smooth promotional appearance for Jackson's latest film would turn into something completely different, something unforgettable. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one and only Samuel L. Jackson. Jimmy announced, his signature grin stretched wide. The audience erupted into cheers as Jackson strode confidently onto the stage, waving and smiling before settling into the guest chair. His posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. "Good to be here, Jimmy," Jackson said, adjusting the sleeve of his suit jacket. "Great to have you, Sam." "Can I call you Sam?" Kimmel asked, leaning in with what seemed like extra enthusiasm. Too much enthusiasm for the very start of the conversation. "Samuel works just fine," Jackson replied coolly, polite but making a point. Kimmel's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Right. Samuel. So, hey, we'll definitely talk about the movie. But first, I gotta ask, something's been bugging me." Jackson's brow raised. This wasn't the typical warm-up. "What's that?" he asked, his tone steady. "Well," Kimmel leaned forward again, his grin sharpening, "you've been really vocal lately about certain Hollywood issues, right? Don't you think maybe you've been pushing a little too hard? A little too aggressive?" The air shifted instantly. The crowd stopped their polite chuckles. Jackson's relaxed posture tensed slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Aggressive? I'm not sure I follow." "Come on, Samuel, Jimmy pressed, that grin of his tightening. "All the stuff you've been saying about representation, about Hollywood not giving fair chances. I mean, don't you think you're maybe making it a bigger deal than it is?" Jackson sat back, his jaw visibly tightening. The audience felt it too, a collective awkwardness. "You're asking me if standing up for equality is me being aggressive?" Samuel's words were slow and deliberate. "I'm just saying," Jimmy shrugged casually. "Things are better now, right? Maybe it's time to, I don't know, move on from that conversation." The studio felt colder now, the room heavier. But Jackson's voice stayed calm but sharp like a blade. "Move on, from what exactly, Jimmy? Move on from wanting to see actors of all backgrounds get equal opportunity? Move on from expecting fairness?" Jimmy waved dismissively. "I mean, things have improved. We don't need to keep hammering it in. It feels like beating a dead horse." "Dead horse?" Samuel's voice rose, his tone cutting through the tension. Some audience members shifted in their seats, sensing the storm brewing. "Are you seriously telling me that wanting to see equality in Hollywood is beating a dead horse?" Jimmy's smile was stiff now. "I mean, I'm not trying to start something. Just thinking, maybe you could focus more on your movies, and less on politics." Jackson's stare was ice-cold, his lips pressed in a thin line. "My craft and my principles have never been separate, Jimmy. Not once." Kimmel laughed nervously, but his discomfort was obvious. "Well, don't you think maybe actors should, stay in their lane? Entertain people? Leave politics to politicians?" Samuel's grip tightened on the armrests, his back straightening. His gaze locked onto Jimmy like a laser. "Stay in my lane, huh? Tell me, Jimmy, when you make jokes about politicians, every night, is that you staying in your lane?" Jimmy's bravado shook. He stammered, "It's different, that's comedy." "Oh, it's different?" Samuel pressed, voice growing firmer. "You get to use your platform to say whatever you want, and it's comedy. But when I use mine, it's a problem." Hey, I never said your views don't matter," Jimmy pushed back, his grin now obviously forced. "You didn't have to say it," Samuel fired back. "The second you suggested I should keep quiet about the things I care about, you said it all." The audience was dead silent now. The crew behind the cameras, the producers, all watching. The playful atmosphere was gone, replaced by something raw. Kimmel squirmed in his chair, trying to reel the show back in. Samuel, look. I think, maybe you're misunderstanding me. Am I? Jackson's voice was calm, but lethal. Because to me, it sounds like you invited me here, not to talk about my work, but to tell me to sit down, shut up, and just be grateful. Jimmy's mouth opened, but no words came out. He glanced to his producers, but no one was rushing to help. He was on his own. Samuel leaned in just slightly, his voice low and unmistakably commanding. So, tell me, Jimmy, what was your real intention tonight? Kimmel's throat bobbed as he swallowed, trying to regain composure, but Samuel wasn't finished. His presence was too large, too commanding. You want to know my intention? Jimmy said, forcing a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I wanted to have an honest talk about the way you've been acting lately. Jackson's eyebrows climbed, his expression switching from irritation to sharp incredulity. How I've been acting? His tone was dangerous, calm on the surface, but with a rising tide beneath. And who made you the judge of my behavior, Jimmy? Kimmel's defenses rose quickly. Look, I've been in this industry a long time, too. I can tell when someone's stepping over lines, Jimmy snapped, his mask of friendliness crumbling into something colder. Samuel leaned forward slightly, voice dropping into a low, razor-sharp tone that longtime fans would recognize, a warning. What lines, Jimmy? Be specific. Kimmel's back straightened, perhaps thinking he'd reclaimed some footing. Like that speech you gave last month. You stood up on stage, and, well, you called out half of Hollywood. Jackson didn't blink. I told the truth. I called out a system that keeps pretending everything's fine when it's not. That's not crossing a line. That's telling it like it is. Jimmy's tone turned defensive. Yeah, well, it made a lot of people uncomfortable. Jackson's laugh cut through the silence, humorless and sharp. Good. People should be uncomfortable, especially when they're part of the problem. See? That right there. Jimmy pointed, his voice growing accusatory. That attitude, Samuel. You act like you're some moral compass for the industry. I act like someone who's earned the right to speak his truth, Samuel shot back. Decades in this business. I've lived it, breathed it, survived it, and I'll speak on it. Something you clearly have an issue with. Jimmy's head shook quickly. I don't have a problem with people speaking their mind. I have a problem when you attack others, people who are actually trying to help. Samuel's jaw clenched, his words now cutting cleanly through the stale studio air. Attacking people? You show me one example where I attacked anyone truly working for change. What I attack is the hypocrisy. People patting themselves on the back for empty gestures while refusing to do the real work. Jimmy shrugged, frustration leaking through his composure. You can't expect everything to change overnight. Overnight? Samuel's voice cracked like thunder. Jimmy, I've been in Hollywood over 30 years. How long exactly do you think we should wait for fairness? Kimmel's grin was completely gone now, replaced by something closer to discomfort. Sweat began forming along his hairline under the hot studio lights. Maybe just be more diplomatic about it, he muttered. Diplomatic? Samuel repeated, his voice cold and measured. Is that code for quiet? For complacent? For obedient? His eyes narrowed. You mean I should smile, nod, and be grateful for crumbs? That's not what I said, Jimmy muttered. It's exactly what you said, Samuel countered, his voice climbing steadily. You just don't have the guts to admit it out loud. The tension inside the studio could be sliced with a blade. Audience members exchanged glances, unsure if they were watching a comedy show or witnessing a cultural reckoning unfold live on air. Samuel's hands gripped the armrests again. Tell me something, Jimmy. When was the last time you used this platform, this massive, nationally broadcasted show, to call out inequality? Kimmel's mouth opened but stalled. I support causes. That's not what I asked, Jackson said, slicing through Jimmy's excuse. When was the last time you used this stage, these cameras, this audience, to challenge the way this industry treats people who look like me? I don't think that's my place, Jimmy muttered, suddenly small. But it's your place to tell me to shut up about it? Samuel fired back, standing taller, energy radiating from every word. Jimmy shifted uncomfortably. I just wanted to have a conversation. Conversation? Samuel's laughter was sharp. You didn't want a conversation, Jimmy. You wanted a lecture. You wanted to make an example out of me. To make me look like a loud, angry man who should just stay in his lane. Jimmy's eyes darted toward his producers, silently pleading for backup, but no one moved. You ambushed me, Jackson continued, rising from his seat. You told your producers to prep questions about my movie. But the first thing out of your mouth was a backhanded insult, an attack on my character. You're being overly sensitive, Jimmy said weakly, words he'd instantly regret. The crack of Samuel's palm slamming into the chair's arm echoed through the studio. Overly sensitive? Samuel's voice now rumbled like thunderclouds about to burst. You call standing up for my dignity being sensitive? I didn't mean it like that, Jimmy stammered, sinking into his seat. Oh, you meant it exactly like that, Samuel snarled. You think because I demand fairness, I'm some difficult diva. Because I don't play along. I'm a problem. Samuel, let's take it down a notch, Jimmy mumbled. Samuel's face hardened like stone. You started this, Jimmy, he said, standing tall, towering over the desk. You dragged me on here under false pretenses. And now that I'm calling you out, you want me to be calm? To make you comfortable again? The crowd was dead quiet, watching every second. I'm not your puppet, Samuel said firmly, his eyes burning. I'm not your token activist. And I damn sure won't be your punching bag. Jimmy's fingers fumbled through his notes, but his script was useless now. You wanted to teach me a lesson, Jimmy? Samuel said, his voice rising to fill every inch of the studio. Guess what? The only lesson here is the world now sees you for exactly who you are. By now, Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just uncomfortable, he was cornered. His usual arsenal of quips and sarcasm had abandoned him. The audience remained utterly silent, glued to every word, every movement on stage. Samuel L. Jackson, unwavering and resolute, stood tall while Kimmel wilted in his seat. The producers were motionless, the crew was wide-eyed, and security lingered at the edges like spectators unwilling to step in. Jackson's voice dropped, cool and precise. You think respect is about clapping when I walk in, laughing at my jokes, and applauding my films, he said, pacing with controlled fury. But real respect means you don't treat me like a spectacle when the cameras roll. You don't invite me here to twist my words, to corner me, to humiliate me under these bright lights. Jimmy opened his mouth, but Jackson cut him off with a sharp gesture. Don't patronize me. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this wasn't a setup. Samuel turned to the live audience. Let's break it down. Not one question about my new film. Not one about the work, the art, the craft. You came out swinging about my activism, about my so-called aggressive opinions. You weren't here to talk movies, Jimmy. You were here to make a statement. People like me should stay in line. Jimmy's voice was feeble. That's not what I meant. Oh, it's exactly what you meant, Samuel shot back, stepping toward the desk. Because when people like me speak up, it rattles people like you. When we point out injustice, when we demand more than scraps, it makes you squirm. And tonight you thought you could use your platform to remind me of my place. Jimmy stammered, reaching for something, anything, to regain control. I respect your work. Spare me, Samuel snapped. You respect my ability to deliver a line, to entertain you. But you don't respect my voice, my perspective, or my right to call out inequality. You see me as a product, a performer, someone who should be grateful to even have a seat at this table. Kimmel's knuckles whitened around his cue cards. Samuel's voice turned thunderous. I'm not here to make you feel comfortable, Jimmy. I'm not here to stroke your ego while you try to undermine mine. I've worked too damn hard for too damn long to be lectured by someone who spent his career making cheap jokes at the expense of people like me. Jimmy's facade crumbled, his typical grin replaced with visible panic. His glances toward the producers were increasingly desperate. You know what's really pathetic? Samuel asked, pacing back toward the center stage, locking eyes with the live audience. This could have been a moment, a real conversation. You could have asked me about the barriers I've broken, the films I've fought to make, the generations I've tried to inspire. But instead, you chose to attack. You chose to diminish. And now, you chose silence. Jimmy swallowed hard, but had no response. Samuel leaned in. Let me make something crystal clear to everyone watching. This industry will not change if people like me stay quiet. Change happens when we make people uncomfortable. When we force conversations that people like you want to avoid. Security edged closer, tension mounting. Oh, and look at that, Samuel gestured to the guards. Right on cue. When words don't work, when your arrogance fails you, what's next? Threaten me with removal. Jimmy shook his head, a weak defense. No one's threatening you. Your producers called security the moment I stood up for myself, Samuel interrupted, pointing to the edge of the set where security guards shifted uneasily. That's the reality, Jimmy. Silence us, Shut us down, or get rid of us. That's the playbook. His chest rose and fell with steady resolve. But here's the thing, you don't control me, Jimmy. You don't get to decide who speaks or who stays silent. I didn't come here to be disrespected, and I won't leave here pretending this was just another friendly interview. Jimmy slouched deeper in his chair, visibly drained. To everyone watching at home, Samuel said, turning toward the main camera, his voice unwavering. Remember this moment. Remember that standing up for yourself comes with consequences. People will label you difficult, angry, ungrateful. They'll twist your words, challenge your character, try to paint you as a problem. Samuel pointed at Kimmel. But you know what's worse than being called difficult? Being compliant. Being silent. Letting people like Jimmy dictate your worth. The audience remained frozen, torn between shock and admiration. Samuel continued. You thought you'd put me in my place tonight, Jimmy. You thought you'd have a viral moment at my expense. Well, congratulations. You got your viral moment. But not because you outsmarted me, because you exposed yourself. You showed everyone who you really are beneath that polished grin. Jimmy's breathing was uneven now, his notes forgotten. Samuel walked toward the stage exit, flanked by security who didn't dare touch him. I'm walking out of here with my pride, my voice, and my dignity intact. You're left sitting there in silence, humiliated, not because I was aggressive, but because you were arrogant. Samuel paused, turned back to Jimmy. One day, you'll replay this moment and realize you had a chance to do something meaningful. And instead, you chose disrespect. Then, looking directly into the camera one last time, Samuel concluded. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone, whether it's a talk show host or a Hollywood executive, make you believe otherwise. Stand your ground. Speak your truth. Always. With that, Samuel L. Jackson exited the stage. Not escorted, but empowered, leaving behind a crushed host, a rattled production crew, and an audience that had just witnessed late-night history unfold in real time. The stage lights dimmed slightly, casting longer shadows across the set. Samuel's footsteps echoed faintly as he walked off stage, shoulders squared, head held high. Behind him, Jimmy Kimmel remained slouched in his seat, his expression hollow, drained of the playful charm that usually defined his on-screen persona. The band, usually ready to jump in with upbeat music cues, sat frozen, unsure of whether to play at all. The studio remained suspended in silence. Thick, palpable, uncomfortable. The camera slowly panned toward Kimmel, capturing his awkward stillness, his flushed face, and the sweat glistening under the hot studio lights. He shuffled his cards, hands trembling slightly, but the familiar rhythm of the show had disintegrated. Off-stage, producers whispered frantically into headsets, debating whether to cut to commercial, to stop filming, or to salvage the segment. No decision came. No saving grace appeared. There was no way to spin what had just unfolded before millions of viewers. Jimmy finally shifted, leaned toward his desk, microphone picking up his uneasy breath. Well, folks, his voice cracked slightly before regaining a sliver of control. That was not how I imagined tonight's show going. He forced a nervous laugh, but it died quickly in the dead air that followed. The audience, still shell-shocked, didn't respond with laughter or applause. A few murmured softly, some glanced around, others looked down at their phones, already texting what they had just witnessed. Jimmy straightened his papers pointlessly. Samuel L. Jackson, everybody. His voice trailed off, lacking conviction, as if even saying the name carried the weight of humiliation. The camera panned to the vacant guest chair, now glaringly empty, a sharp contrast to its previous occupant's commanding presence. Jimmy cleared his throat, searching for words, for an exit strategy. We were here to talk about his new movie. Obviously, things, went in a different direction. His grin faltered again, as he realized how futile the attempt was. There was no recovering the tone. No banter, no punchline, no quick save. And then, something shifted, not just in the room, but in Jimmy himself. A realization, perhaps, that his carefully crafted image had cracked on national television, exposing a side he rarely had to confront. The teleprompter blinked instructions, but Jimmy ignored it, staring into the main camera, swallowing his pride. Look, I'm not going to pretend like I didn't handle that badly. The audience stirred, sensing something more unscripted. I came out here tonight, thinking I could challenge Samuel, maybe get some fiery TV moment. But that wasn't an interview, Jimmy admitted, his tone quieter, more subdued. That was me, ambushing a guest, someone who's earned way more respect than I showed him. The silence turned heavier, more introspective. I thought I could poke at him, prod him, get a reaction, Jimmy confessed, running his fingers through his hair. And what happened was, I got taught a lesson I probably should have learned a long time ago. The crew exchanged glances behind the cameras. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't planned. Jimmy continued. You see, it's easy in this chair to think you can control every narrative, to feel untouchable, because you've got the microphone, the studio, the crowd. But tonight reminded me real power doesn't come from having the loudest voice in the room. It comes from knowing when to listen. The audience shifted, some faces softening, others nodding slightly. Jimmy's eyes lingered on the camera. And Samuel, if you're watching this later, I owe you an apology. You didn't come here to be ambushed. You didn't come here to be put on trial. You came here to promote your work, to have a conversation. And I turned it into something else. He sighed deeply, the bravado stripped away. This platform, it should elevate voices, not diminish them. Tonight, I forgot that. And I paid the price. A few light claps scattered through the audience, hesitant but genuine. Jimmy's lips curled into a faint, apologetic smile. I'm going to take this as a lesson. A hard one, sure, but a necessary one. Not every conversation needs to be a confrontation. Not every guest is here to be handled. Some are here to be heard. He set down the cards, pushing them away, signaling his detachment from the performance. To everyone at home, you saw it unfiltered. You saw me, get humbled. And you saw Samuel L. Jackson stand his ground, with pride, with power, and with grace. His final words landed softly but firmly. And if I've got anything left to say tonight, it's this. Every voice deserves respect. Especially those who have fought the longest to be heard. The crowd offered a more supportive applause this time, recognizing the sincerity, albeit after the damage had been done. Jimmy nodded, managing a fragile smile. We'll be back after this. The screen faded to black. Across the nation, and soon the internet, the segment exploded. Clips of Samuel's powerful takedown circulated instantly. Social media flooded with support for Samuel's words, praising his composure and conviction. Hashtags like #RespectSamuel, #LateNightRealityCheck, and #VoicesMatter trended within hours. Memes of Jimmy's speechless face popped up everywhere, gifs looping the moment Samuel stood tall, moments when Jimmy fumbled, when security appeared, when truths were spoken unapologetically. Critics on morning shows, podcasts, and news outlets dissected the event for days. Some praising Jimmy for owning up, others condemning him for allowing his platform to descend into ambush tactics. But the true victor in public perception was clear. Samuel L. Jackson didn't just walk off a late-night stage, he walked into history. If you were in Samuel L. Jackson's place, how would you have responded? Would you have walked off the stage or confronted Kimmel head-on like he did? Comment below with your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss these raw and unfiltered Hollywood showdowns. Your engagement helps us uncover the real stories behind the glitz and glamour.